It's over!
He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one.
Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both teams here today.
Hi, I'm Rupha Ramani and you're watching Sports This Week. It's a roundup of all the top stories and perspectives from the week gone by, starting with cricket and two major stories to note here. First up, South Africa destroying India in the two-match series at home. What went wrong? And is there more than just lack of player application that's at fault here? Second, Aussies crush Bazball in 2 days in the first Ashes Test. Where's the bravado disappeared to? English cricket fraternity is fuming with everything to play for in Test number 2 at the Gabba. A shocking double disqualification at the F1 Grand Prix with both Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris points scrapped means Max Verstappen is well and truly back in the hunt. All you need to know about what to expect in Qatar and what went wrong. And in what is one for the shutterbugs, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to come face-to-face with US President Donald Trump. This is not a bilateral talk or a summit, but the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw. Do we expect a headline or a handshake? And the last one is off our usual path at the backdrop of a phenomenal WPL mega auction, one that saw record-breaking buys and the world champions making waves. We bring you a special appeal, our stand on a matter that seems to have consumed the country. All of that coming your way. Indian cricket is standing at a crossroads. For years, we were called the home track bullies. Then we reinvented ourselves and became ambassadors of Test cricket, a team that carried the longest format on its shoulders, a team that turned India into the most feared fortress in world cricket. Today, that fortress has cracks. The recent results show something India never quite imagined. They are crumbling at home. After New Zealand, South Africa have now whitewashed India, a first series win for the Proteas in India since 2000. A record that stood resolute up until this point. And this transition phase, it's not moving the way we perceived it would. The South Africa Test series was a reminder that the gap between what India were and what India are becoming is widening fast. Criticism, memes, trolling, this Indian setup is under siege. Now, after losing the first test inside 3 days, there still was optimism in that dressing room, optimism all around. Fans believed different pitch, different conditions, this team will bounce back. Guwahati offered pace, bounce, carry, a refreshing change and a little something for everyone over the course of the 5 days that it played out. And ironically, the visitors made the better use of it. South Africa piled on 490 in that first innings, then put on a bowling clinic, bundling India out for 201. Marco Jansen, the player of the match, was tall, relentless and vicious with the short ball. Asked India questions they simply had no answers to. From that moment, India shifted from trying to win that test somehow to level to trying to survive. Even so, survival didn't come. The pacey wicket eased out for batting and South Africa showed how to make the most of it. Again, they posted a mammoth 549-run target and with it exposed India's biggest demon, spin at home. Simon Harmer ripped through that top order. First Yashasvi Jaiswal and then KL Rahul walked back on a dismissal that even Anil Kumble couldn't stop himself from trolling about. What followed? India getting all out for 140, and that moment sums up the current state. There's confusion, there's lack of clarity, and a team that's clearly searching for itself as one match after the other just keeps rolling on. A team that seems to be going through the motions. Now, once upon a time, many other countries feared touring India. Winning even a single test here was a sense of achievement because you had to really double down and work hard to cross the line. India's monstrous team would stop you in your tracks with the ball and the bat. Series wins here was legendary, and the numbers prove it. India lost just 4 tests at home across 7 years. They've lost 5 now in the last 12 months. This isn't a blip, it's now becoming a bit of a pattern. It was believed that the New Zealand whitewash was just a one-off, something that you could wipe the slate clean from. But South Africa doing it now shows the cracks are widening and the opposition isn't holding back.
We wanted India to spend as much time on their feet out in the field. We wanted them to really grovel, to steal a phrase, bat them completely out the game, and then say to them, well, come and survive on the last day and an hour this evening.
One word from that quote, grovel, exploded across social media platforms because this word, of course, carries weight. Tony Greig, 1976, the West Indies, it carries racial undertones. Of course, that could just be an oversight coming from someone like Shukri Conrad, who is known to have transformed a divided and a troubled South African cricket unit. And dwelling on this probably unintentional insult would only derail us here from the more important matter at hand. Truth is, South Africa came with a plan. A detailed, disciplined, ruthless plan to rout India, and the hosts simply didn't turn up. Experts and many cricket voices who've observed Indian cricket over the years have been rather blunt and brutal. India are not getting their combinations right. They aren't adapting to conditions. They aren't reading pitches and tracks well enough. And the transition from that Rohit Kohli era to the next generation feels rather chaotic and disjointed. Younger players are talented, there's no doubt there. But Test cricket demands much, much more. It demands patience, game awareness, and solid temperament. Qualities that must be built, not assumed. And yes, it takes time.
I hate using this word, transition. But this is exactly what transition is. When your batting lineup has played fewer than 15-20 Test matches, they need time. Hopefully, they keep learning.
Well, something we've been saying all along, but is this the kind of communication or the messaging that's being sent across in that dressing room? Jaiswal showed fight in that first innings, but fell to his temptations in the second. KL Rahul too struggled through the series. Sure, Shubman Gill's omission was a massive hit. His absence did affect that Indian lineup, but is India going to be too reliant on just one player to pull them through? Rishabh Pant, who was expected to step up here, threw away his wicket in that first innings and in the second, succumbed to spin. As a captain, he had the responsibility to carry the team forward and not carry his template alone. Let's be clear, there's no harm in rebuilding, but there is harm in not accepting that rebuilding is the need of the hour. So what's the path forward here? India needs clarity, whether it's in selection, in role definition, in leadership. They need hunger, they need the same hunger that once made this very country, this cricketing nation, unstoppable at home. And they need to embrace the fact that this is a new chapter, whether you like it or not, and one that requires time, patience, and painful lessons learned. South Africa didn't just beat India, they exposed the current Indian setup and the cricket here, exposed the cracks, the decision-making gaps, the lack of direction, and reminded the world that dominance is not a permanent fixture. You must earn it with every series, with every match and every single session. Because if the last decade taught us anything, it's that India can be giants. The question now is, do they still remember how? Australian cricketer Travis Head has made a bit of his calling card, the act of handing out nightmares to every opposition. Absolutely no Indian fan will forget November 2023 and how Head squashed a billion dreams, and he ensured England will now have a fresh nightmare to relive every time they even think of playing Test cricket in Australia. The Ashes kick-started on a thumping note. Now, there were many things cool and some not so cool about this Test match. if you even call it that. And just when the purists were getting ready to sharpen their knives, Head made it all about him and Australia once again. And so exposing how inept and blunt Bazball has become. The question I pose though is this: was the Ashes first test a great advert of Test cricket, the format itself, or did it only raise more concerns about its future? Let's dive in. Now, one thing is clear post-Perth. England has dug a hole so deep they will have to do something remarkable to bounce back at Canberra, where they head to next. Now, first off, Bazball. That word has been horribly abused, and the biggest culprits right now seem to be the ones who invented this in the first place. Now, the concept, of course, sounded very cool and revolutionary, but what's clear now is that it's just not working, and probably not being employed in the smartest possible way. Many English cricketers and commentators are furious, and the reactions, of course, were ranging from absolute anger to disappointment, which was understandable. But I just had to reserve separate space for one man's frustration, which was very, very evident even as he sat in the commentary box. Stuart Broad was in physical pain as he watched England seemingly implode. Now, this particular moment that you're seeing behind me, of course, came when Joe Root was dismissed by Mitchell Starc. In that first innings, he was sitting next to Matthew Hayden, but you can only imagine what he would have felt watching the horror that unfolded on the next day and as the test ended. In fact, Stuart Broad made one announcement and comment very proud and loud ahead of the start of the series. That was that this side was the best English side that he's seen, and it was contrastingly the worst Aussie side since 2010.
You wouldn't be outlandish in thinking it's actually not an opinion, it's a fact. It's probably the worst Australian team since 2010, when England last won, and it's the best English team since 2010.
Yes, the reference to 2010 was rather obvious. It's when England last beat Australia in Australia, a squad that Stuart Broad himself was a part of. So, like a jibe plus a gentle pat on the back as well. Problem though is, Travis Head took this comment way too seriously and put forth a batting masterclass in that second innings that wrapped up a test match within 2 days, but gave fans all their money's worth till then. Head took the concept of Bazball and elevated it. He came out to open, genius move, and completely dismantled the attack from the get-go. No fancy and quirky shots, though there was that delicious ramp shot somewhere en route his 50. He played all round the park with some proper cricketing shots there, almost giving England a lesson in how to Bazball it. His partner for a considerable stay out in the middle, Marnus Labuschagne, played some unorthodox shots, slapping the deliveries around almost in disdain, as if Australia were not only showing an intent to win this thing resoundingly, but also proving a point to England. Unfortunately, that also meant a test match getting over in just 2 days. Now, to quote a commentator, Aussie friend of mine, we all watched something brilliant, but I'm not quite sure if that was a test match. Now, Head may have joked that he felt sorry for the fans who paid for day 3. Now, truth is, while Australia won that test, crucial points that they notched up regarding the World Test Championship cycle, Cricket Australia lost, and millions, $3 million to be precise. This was a test that saw record attendance. Day 1, more than 50,000 turned up. It was a shade lesser than on day 2, but more than 1 lakh in attendance. Now, that's massive for this test. Now, Cricket Australia policy is quite clear. Any match that ends earlier, fans who hold single-day tickets for the days that were cancelled get full refunds. That's 3 days here. Now, while Australia can still smile about the victory on the field, England will unfortunately look back at this test with only more remorse and more questions. Now, while breaking boundaries, reimagining the sport and pushing the envelope is all good for the sport, truth is Test cricket has its own rules. Some that you just have to play and abide by. You simply have to respect the format. You have to respect the situation. You need to respect your opposition. There's a reason there are different formats. Each have very different demands and different expectations. Test cricket gives you the luxury of time, not one to be abused and made little of. England's lack of technique, especially in that top order, lack of thinking and test smarts, it all failed them. They let Australia come right back from a position of being cornered. But more than this, England need to do some serious thinking on who they want to be. What is their true identity? What should be their strategy? And this is key as they head into test number 2. The Formula 1 2025 season is officially going down to the wire because the Las Vegas Grand Prix has detonated a twist nobody saw coming. If the pun points to explosion, then one team surely did. McLaren's superstar duo Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris were shockingly disqualified hours after the race, and just like that, the race for the championship has been ripped wide open. Max Verstappen, who many had declared finished in this title race, is right back in the mix. And now Formula 1 has a 3-way fight heading into its final stretch. So what exactly triggered this double disqualification, and how much has the title battle changed? Does Max Verstappen suddenly have the clearest path to a comeback nobody saw coming? Let me break it all down for you. Now, the Las Vegas Grand Prix was not just another race on the calendar. It was expected to be that turning point of this season, the third last race and potentially the one that could have sealed the title for Lando Norris. The hype, massive. The stakes, enormous. The attention, off the charts, with even FBI Director Kash Patel and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in attendance. But Vegas isn't just about glamour, it's about unpredictability, and that came and was delivered in abundance. From the very start, Vegas 2025 felt wacky. A manhole cover came loose, 2 red flags broke the rhythm of practice, multiple yellows disrupted qualifying, and the weekend turned into a wild mix of wet, greasy patches and bumpy straights. It was chaotic, and a real test of the nerves, concentration levels, and a fight for survival. Through it all, one man stood above the rest, Lando Norris. He outdrove everyone, even Max Verstappen, the rainmaster. Norris took pole, he controlled the pace, he finished second, a critical podium, placing him firmly ahead in the title race. Now, on the surface, it was a dream weekend for McLaren, until it wasn't, because 4 hours after the race, just as the champagne oozed out, just as the title looked within touching distance, McLaren were rocked by the biggest bomb. Both Norris and Piastri disqualified, wiped out, erased from the points because they failed the mandatory post-race skid block inspection. The reason was plank violation. Now, what's that? The plank is a mandatory 10mm board under the car. It is designed to limit ride height and prevent the teams from running dangerously low, close to the track, to gain that speed. FIA rules are very strict here. As per the rule book, it cannot wear down more than 1mm over the course of a race. Now, what does that look like? About 9mm. It can't go below, which is the thickness of this pencil, or a stack of 12 ATM cards, if you put that out. That's how much gap has to be there between that bottom part of the car and the racetrack. But McLaren's cars showed excessive wear. Norris's plank was over 0.12mm, Piastri well above 0.26mm. The world was in shock as the most unbelievable scenes played out just with few races left, because this has happened, but especially in the current scenario and within hours of completion, pings, alerts rang out with the strangest turn of events. Drivers were clearly stunned and distraught, and McLaren, a team in striking distance of a world championship, failed on a fundamental technical check. Now, unintentional, yes. Costly, absolutely. Avoidable, absolutely yes. Now, let me explain this here. The main reason for the difference in that plank came down to excessive wear and tear. We know how this works. Now, let's look at the setup. In qualifying, McLaren had opted for a more loaded aerodynamic setup, heavier rear. Let's look at the conditions. Now, the race itself was held in relatively dry conditions, unlike what happened during practice and qualifying, which was wet, challenging, slippery, which led to the critical lack of foresight rather than an outright error by McLaren. Because as Andrea Stella admits during the race, the greater grip produced thanks to the setup itself created greater vertical load, which means excessive scraping. The turns at certain point also didn't help, and the fact that they had not carried out long run simulations on slick tires meant you couldn't really foresee the miscalculation that ultimately could occur, which is what happened. Now, sure, this has happened in the past. It's happened with Ferrari, and the team had limited time to change this or do anything else just before the race. However, unfortunately, the result is this. The race for the driver's title is now split wide open. Championships don't care about excuses. And in Formula One, opportunities like these don't come every year. Before Las Vegas, Verstappen was a long shot, a mathematical possibility rather than a genuine contender. But the moment McLaren slipped, Max Verstappen now smells blood. Here's what the standings now look like after this. Verstappen is level with Piastri. Both Piastri and Verstappen are now just 24 points behind Norris, with 58 points still up for grabs now. And momentum is on one side only, Max Verstappen's. Because while Norris and Piastri walked away devastated from Vegas, Verstappen left emboldened. This is the same Verstappen who was buried earlier this season beneath Red Bull's political turmoil, Christian Horner's exit, and a car that struggled to match McLaren's raw pace. But since the Italian Grand Prix in September, Max has clawed his way back. Quietly, consistently, doggedly. And now he walks into Qatar as the hunter with nothing to lose. And a relaxed Verstappen is a dangerous Verstappen. He only needs to look back at 2021 for inspiration when he defeated Lewis Hamilton by just 8 points in one of the most dramatic season enders ever. 4 years on, he has another chance to steal a title that seemed out of his reach. 2 races to go, 3 drivers in contention, one of the tightest finales in modern F1. Norris still leads, but now has to overcome the mental battles that Vegas scarred him with. Piastri must fight back after the worst gut punch of his career. And Verstappen, well, he's smiling, smelling opportunity. And Max Verstappen with momentum is one of the most unstoppable forces this sport has ever seen. Canada, America and Mexico are gearing up to co-host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But behind the glossy promos and stadium fly-throughs, reality is far from perfect. Immigration feuds, tariff wars, political posturing, basically a full-blown North American soap opera. Sporting fixtures, well, also turning into battlegrounds, full of jibes and controversies. And that leads me to one unavoidable question. If the hosts can't get along, how will they deliver the biggest World Cup in history together? But in this diplomatic storm comes a tiny sliver of hope. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to meet US President Donald Trump next week in Washington, not at a summit, not at a bilateral, but during the FIFA World Cup draw. Football once again forcing politics to share the table. Now, as the eyes of the world shift to this meeting, we ask, will it thaw tensions? Or will it pour more fuel on an already simmering fire? Now, ever since Donald Trump walked back into the Oval Office, America's relations with its neighbors have taken a bit of a nosedive. The US-Mexico dynamics, walking on thin ice, ICE raids, aggressive border crackdowns, tariff threats, everything amplifying distrust. And then, of course, there's Canada, locked in a tariff war with the US, with economic friction spilling into public sentiment. These political fractures aren't just in newsrooms, they are visible on the field. Anti-America sentiment is now a recurring soundtrack across international sporting events. Boos, chants, banners, the message is loud. North America isn't united. And the leaders, they don't miss a single chance to hit back. Trump took shots before American failures in ice hockey. The then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau mocked the US after their Four Nations playoff final loss. One off? Not at all. This has become a regular cross-border roast battle. But here's the irony. For all the political tension, sports has always been the one thing that has united them. Basketball, baseball, ice hockey. Canada and America share leagues, rivalries, champions, heartbreaks. They've built entire sporting cultures together, but lately even sports has turned into a bit of a war zone. Everything from NBA courts to NHL arenas has a layer of political friction coating it. Naturally, the question for the World Cup was simple. If the hosts are so divided, how do you unify the world? And that's where the Carney-Trump meeting becomes significant.
What matters is negotiations, when they re-engage. They haven't re-engaged yet, so that's the fundamental point.
Carney may have downplayed expectations, but the messaging, talks are coming, negotiations will resume. And that is massive because historically, Canada and America have been the closest of allies. Shared borders, shared culture, shared industries, and yes, of course, shared sporting history. The only wedge between them, of course, is the ongoing tariff war. And if that tension hadn't existed, we'd likely see smoother cooperation, stronger sporting ties, and a more harmonized World Cup roadmap, just like earlier years. Remember, Canadian and American teams compete together in the NBA, the NHL, MLB, MLS, unequal numbers, yes, but symbolically, these leagues show exactly how strong their partnership can be. However, here's the gray zone. The real fear, what if this meeting goes sour? Trump's fallout with world leaders is well documented. Ask Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. That diplomatic meltdown was public, messy, and unforgettable. A similar one with Canada. The consequences won't stop at politics. Because this time the stakes are bigger. Trade, security, culture, and the biggest World Cup to ever be hosted. A united front is non-negotiable. As we head into this week, eyes won't just be on the World Cup draw, they'll be on Carney and Trump. Two leaders who must decide whether the 2026 World Cup becomes a symbol of unity or a stage overshadowed by political hostility. Either way, its ripple effects will be felt across stadiums, borders, and billions watching in 2026. Our next story is not so much a story but a stand, a statement, one that needs to be taken and made now, before we are consumed with the train wreck that this one episode has already turned into. We are witnessing a spectator sport of a different kind. What a mockery sports coverage has devolved into, barely weeks after we as a nation, a sports-loving, hero-building nation, were celebrating a historical moment. Have we forgotten the line between curiosity and gossip, and has that blurred to take us all in a downward spiral, pulling down an athlete along with us who, in fact, spent most of her life fighting hard to climb up despite it all? And that's when we, as empathetic, evolved individuals, at least that's the goal, need to say stop, and it's enough. One of the biggest superstars of Indian cricket, Smriti Mandhana, announced her engagement on her own social media platform in a manner that made us all realize how real, powerful, and happy this moment was for her and her loved ones. The celebrations, the music, the pictures, all bringing us joy right after a euphoric World Cup win. Picture perfect, we all thought, but once those festivities halted, for whatever reason, the tireless social media gossip accounts started working overtime, selling news of another kind. Now, if you are expecting a tell-all, the inside scoop, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, what really went wrong, the real dope, as they say, then you clearly have made the wrong pit stop. I'm here to say that all of these speculations, the chatter, the prying, constant hounding everyone connected to Mandhana for a comment, this urge to know all, and let's face it, the bottom line, this voyeurism has to stop. Are we forgetting that this is someone who just won us all a World Cup that has evaded India for decades? Smriti Mandhana is a champion, a once-in-a-generation talent, a young girl who fought hard to make it to the grandest stage in a sport that, quite frankly, was never kind to the other gender, where women had to wear loose clothes, chop off their hair, tweak their own identity, and then defy a rigorous conditioning, conservative family. doubting relatives, nosy neighbours, unrelenting coaches, to just about make it to a ground. Smriti, along with many of her own teammates, represent that kind of a success story that came from her and her belief alone. Sure, she has had a strong support system, but listening to these women cricketers post that World Cup winning haze, you all will have to come to realize that this was a dream that they had to have dreamt solo, each of them. No beauty of collective vision here. It was a journey each of them undertook alone. Smriti Mandhana endured all of this to become one of the most dominant southpaw batters this country has ever produced. She not only marched forward in her quest to be the best, she did all she could to be there for her teammates along the way, helped her close friends shine and pull them out of depths of despair. All she wants now is some space. Why can't we give her that? Space from non-prying posts, from those reels, from camera crews following them everywhere, space from trolls and hate mongers who love to snark and comment at any misfortune. Find that to be fodder enough to create memes and jokes that, quite frankly, are not funny. And while gossip is as old as time, here's what's not: social media. It's not Chinese whispers and tea party gatherings who do the job now. One click of a button, a seemingly innocuous post, and it's out there, getting multiplied with the technology only aiding and abetting. The algorithm of this wonderful system will do the rest. That's the truth today. These athletes, they live in a time where a mental upheaval can sneak up on them faster than a curveball on the field or an injury tackling one. We've heard the best in the business speak about mental health. Then there's the argument of being a celebrity, and that's how you open yourself up to it, almost as if they asked for it. Putting up pictures or videos of her happy memories or pulling them down, it's the agency she exercised. A line has been clearly crossed in an attempt to cover news. And while we all can critique and analyze performances or the lack of it, certain actions or comments that go against a particular value system that's in place, it is our duty to question something else too. It isn't our job to hound and create an environment so toxic, especially when it comes to sportsperson's personal space, that she'd think her cricketing journey to getting here, which was fraught with roadblocks, was probably easier. Even now, Smriti Mandhana doesn't need saving. All we need to tell ourselves is that surely there are more things paramount in the sporting world today that needs far more attention.
I wore the crown of a revolutionary. I promised to lift my nation. I claimed to fight imperialism. I became the very thing I warned against. I funded militias across continents. I feared my own shadow. Some called me the King of Kings. History calls me something else. The dictator. Who am I?